Hey guys.
Hey, welcome back to Wild Speculations. I'm Daniel.
I'm Scott.
This week we talk about episode 31.
Commerce and Chaos. So, it's pretty much a downtime episode, but I think there was a lot of things that raised some questions, and there was a few things that all but put the final nail in the coffin on saying we were right about things.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start?
Well, I'm not usually one person to jump up and yell in celebration usually.
But you did.
But at one point, I did hop a little on my yoga ball. And hands in the air. Yeah. And I love the title of this episode. And it's just perfect. But we have a recap from Matt talking about getting Ophelia there, and when they were there closing the job off, we didn't see Cree.
Right.
Which we got to see this episode.
Correct.
And I thought it was interesting. Well, I guess let's get into what we've called. And also, I guess to lead into that, this week is the last regular episode.
Before
this
a
month.
one shot, yeah.
Week after, we have a one shot. We talked about it, and we're pretty certain we're going to do an episode following that on Tuesday.
Yes, if the one shot does not directly tie to the current campaign in some way, we have a topic to discuss and things.
Which is going to basically be going more in depth and covering the evidence that we've gotten so far for some of our major theories that we've shared with you guys.
That's right.
So yeah, the Change of Bolivian.
Mm-hmm.
Was the big one.
Tarask.
Which we haven't. It's not fair to say that we got confirmation of that this week, but the Change of Bolivians certainly.
Yes.
And the storyline of them having to make new trammels, I think, is going to be tier 3.
Yes.
And we sort of had a glimpse of that in this episode. And I'm drawing a blank on the exact moment that I thought of it. But it was when they were talking about future plans, I think. When Knott's like, well, Caleb, you wanted to go up north.
Right.
And Jester's like, well, Ford, you wanted to go to the Solstice Academy. And and he's like, well, not yet. And in my brain, I was like, yeah, he's got to hit 8th level at least. Before he's going to multi-class out of Warlock.
At this point, yeah.
So I was like, okay. But it might even be closer to tier 3 that they do that. Or tier 4. One thing that occurred to me was, and I don't know why it was until then, but when Cree was confronting Ford about it.
Yeah.
One, I think they may have an enemy in Cree.
Perhaps. If Cree determines that it's their fault.
Well, she said it, and Ford basically was like, yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah.
Now, maybe because Ford didn't try to lie to her, or sort of talk around it or what have you, that may have mitigated the damage that she was going to attempt to do to them. But I don't think they have a friend in Kree.
Oh, no. The only one who had a friend in Kree is dead.
Yeah.
And buried outside of Shady Run.
Yeah.
Shady Creek.
So yeah, I don't think that's going to go well at all.
Well, speaking of making enemies, I have a feeling, and I talked to you about this a little bit. Well, one, Jester's been doing what Matt all but surmised as hate crimes to the Temples. And this time she chose the Platinum Dragon.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that really caught me on this was the colors she was using. She used the 5 colors that are representative of Tiamat, the Scaled Tyrant. So, if they trace it back to her, she's going to be tried for worshiping Tiamat.
Yeah.
But what I think is going to happen is we're going to see either groups of clerics, like war clerics, or paladins with the Vengeance Oath, or some combination thereof, seeking out these brigands that are defacing the approved gods.
I don't know if we'll necessarily see that, but if
she keeps going, it's going to happen.
Well, I mean, if you're a GM or that's running a game sort of concurrently with this, or maybe even in Tal'Dorei, I could definitely see that that's a thread you could pick up,
yeah,
and run with. And if Laura is running the one shot, maybe that's the one shot. Maybe they're...
Yeah, I mean, this may be her first chance behind the DM screen, but with Baby, I'm not sure that she's...
Yeah, I don't...
With how young Ronan is, I don't think she's going to be jumping behind the screen just yet.
No.
Just because if she's got to get up for him.
Yeah. Okay. I have no basis for this, but I have a feeling it's going to be a guest GM.
Okay.
Like I say, I have no basis for this. It's just a gut feeling I had because they didn't announce it.
Yeah, and when it's been a player, they've always announced it.
Yeah, I think that's why subconsciously that thought came to me. And I think it might be Colville.
Okay. I mean,
Colville's my top spot for that, but
I would say someone like Todd. I forget his how to say
Kenrick.
Kenrick, or one of those guys from D&D. Could be if we're gonna have that. My initial thought was Travis or Laura because they gave a very obvious look to each other and smirked. And I picked up on that on my first watch through. On my rewatch, I picked up on Marisha smirking and giving Liam a look, so maybe another Liam episode. Those were my 2 thoughts.
Well, of all of them, I think Liam is the most comfortable behind the screen.
That's true.
And I think that's largely because he's been running for his kids.
Yeah.
And just doing it, even if you're running for kids, trains those muscles.
Yeah. Although, might be fun to see another Grog run.
Okay, so say it is Travis. What if instead of Grog,
it's a Ford run?
It's a Ford run.
Could be.
We did get a lot of Ford backstory this time.
We did.
Yeah, maybe he runs it as sort of they're on a ship and they're playing Dungeons and Dragons. Like the same Grog game, but it's Ford running it.
Yeah. That could be. Speaking of Ford, we have similar yet different theories that have come out of this last episode regarding Mine. Okay, so Vendrin. His. I'm horrible with names. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I'm not great either, but I remember it because it's Vendrin and Sangren.
Gotcha. Anyway, his captain, who he looked at as a father figure, I think that relationship viewing went both ways. We already know that Vendrin had the crystal, the clawed crystal, put inside him earlier before Ford ever met him. I think he was the original warlock, which we both agree on.
Yeah.
But I think that the reason why Ford doesn't remember making a deal to get these powers is when the ship was going down, Vendrin just passed the pact to him and gave up his life in exchange for Ford's. Yeah, used his dying wish, so to speak, to save Ford, which would have given him the falchion, but because of what we know of the patron, the consume, the learn, the grow, it would have reset the falchion back to 0.
Yeah.
And made Ford earn that again, which is why the crystal was then able to be found and taken to that spot and all of that. But I think it was a touching father-son moment. I'm going to save this guy who is like a son to me, pass on the pact, which is great. I love unorthodox ways of picking up pacts, like the guys from Nerdarchy. One of them played a warlock where he essentially stole a portion of this thing's power.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily I made a deal with him, but then when it came back, he ended up making a deal so that the thing didn't just wipe him out for stealing from him.
Yeah.
Things like that I find really interesting. So that was my thought, and I still really like my idea, and I'm still holding on to it for now, but I really like your idea too, and I'm going to let you tell that one.
Yeah, so immediately what I thought of when Ford was going through telling that story is he made a point of saying that he was higher up in the crew than Sangren.
Right.
And Sangren's the one that blew up the ship, and then Ford got the power. So in my brain, I went to, it's some sort of a curse that's passed on.
Mm-hmm.
And whether the ship was cursed or whether it's people who are in this guy's crew through this pact, which would also have some interesting connotations with the Mighty Nine.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you didn't mention that earlier.
No.
And instantly, I'm like, so if Ford dies, does one of them get to multi-class into the...
Except Caleb is the leader.
Yeah.
So...
Does it...
That might circumvent it.
It might circumvent it, but it might pass it to Caleb. If it goes to the highest ranking member of the crew you're part of.
Yeah. So yeah, and I like the idea that the ship is cursed. I kind of like, because that's very nautical.
Right.
And also, this guy may have thought by blowing up the ship he would get the crystal.
Yes. And
he didn't get it. So...
Which would be why he ransacked the storeroom afterwards.
Yeah. And I'm 92% certain that the captain is Sangren.
Okay. Yeah.
So... now, well, fuck it, I'm thinking of it now. The NPC that the community created, the Turtle Bard.
Yes. The tattooist.
Yep. Do we see him this Thursday, or do we see him in September?
I think we see him in September.
You think?
I think.
I think Matt wants the extra couple weeks to work on the accent that he was...
Yeah. I think... I don't know. I just... and he seemed to be thinking that it probably wouldn't be a right away thing. And yeah, we've had a couple of weeks, but we've only had a couple of weeks.
That's true. If they do, if the pace of the game is they stop in Nicodranas first,
right?
We
anywhere
may
along
not.
the coast.
That's true.
Is a place where we can see them.
Yeah.
But I think that, and it maybe he said it might be way down the line later rather than sooner, just because he didn't know if they were actually going to go back to. I know he wanted them to go that way, but they could have decided to go visit Nod's family. They could have decided to, Ford could have decided, I need answers. I have to get to the academy. Because that was his point in going to the academy. I think he had the idea, and he was pretty sure.
I think that was a way for Matt to not spoil where the campaign was going. Although by that point, we had already surmised that that's where the campaign was going.
For a while.
Yeah.
Like since before they left Zadash the first time.
So, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not comfortable saying exactly that, but
right.
This skirts awfully close to the debate of free will.
Yeah.
And the kind of experimentation and unique outlook that game masters get in the concept of free will. But we saw Jester dealing with her. So this was a shopping episode.
Yes. Hence the commerce.
Yes. Which is why I say this episode's perfectly named. But Travis may hate it. And a lot of viewers may even hate it.
Well, there's not much more in protest you can do to a shopping episode than leave town on your own.
It's true. But Critical Role does a great job of illustrating when you have moments of characterization.
Yes.
When even seemingly mundane things are now important character points.
Right.
That these choices don't just come out of the blue. There's a reason behind them.
Yeah.
Not just, hey, I need a toolkit, or I need, rope and adventuring gear. The things you want for your character are because of there's a roleplay reason for it.
Right. Like the Tinkerer's tools.
Right. Do we see not become proficient with Tinkerer's tools? Do you think?
I think so. Oh yeah. I think that plays into our whole guild artisan thing. Okay. Although speaking of backgrounds, one thing that we have been getting wrong, and I feel like an idiot for not realizing it, is Jester's background. But here's what I think. Okay, I think like Percy took the scholar? No, the guild artist. He took one background for the mechanical stuff, and then he did the flaws and stuff with the noble. I think Jester's done that with the folk hero and the charlatan. The charlatan's the one that gives you the forgery kit and the disguise kit. And she specifically said this week that she has the forgery kit from her background.
Yeah.
So I think what she's done, but everything else, all the stuff in the backstory lines up with the things you get from being a folk hero.
Yeah.
So I think she did what Percy did, but with charlatan and folk hero.
Okay.
So I think she's a hybrid, which the rules tell you to feel free to do.
Yeah. And I thought of that too, which I didn't catch it on my first viewing, but on my rewatch, I was like, oh, well, I guess we're wrong. And then I had sort of made that mental note, and I was like, well, I don't know if we're totally wrong. And
That's what I said, but I caught it on the first watch. I was like, wait, that can't be. She's a full cure. Everything point. I was like, she did a Percy.
Yeah. So the Platinum Dragon Tiamat. And I think Travis summed it up perfectly in the episode as it was finishing. He's like, that is the deepest into shit we've ever been. And it turned on its head.
Yeah.
Like, that's the deepest, like, everything's going to go to shit. We're going to burn this shit down. Yeah. The campaign's going to derail. We're gonna and they turned it around. And she burned a lot.
Yeah. I think she went through either all or almost all of her spell slots.
Second and third level spells, yeah. I don't think she went through first levels yet. Because she was casting her Charm Person, Hold Person at higher levels.
Right.
To nail more people.
Well, she used some of them. Some of her first levels, though. She said, I can do this as a first level. Like the disguised self.
Oh, yeah. But she used all of her second and third level spells.
Yep.
Because she used her last one to cast Hold Person.
Yeah.
It was sort of clumsy. I mean, it was very Jester, but it also kind of shows the sorts of shenanigans that trickster clerics could get up to.
Yeah, and I love Liam's comment. Everyone think back to when Laura gave us the stink eye for the hospital run. And she's like, yeah, okay, that's true.
I'm going to defend Laura on this.
Okay.
They deserved the stink eye for that one.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm not saying they did.
Because not only was it a bad plan, they didn't get anything out of it. Her plan was kind of good, and she got what she wanted out of it. She vandalized the statue, she caused chaos in the temple, and she got away.
And she got the traveler's attention again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, to me, she ticks all the boxes. Total win. Yeah, it was a half hour of showtime, and they probably weren't expecting to do that.
They weren't. She even said that.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was going to take this long. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. But, I mean, sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
I don't think... So this gets to a big question that happens in a lot of GM forums. Mm-hmm. Fudging dice, rolling dice, that kind of thing.
Right.
If you leave something up to the dice, you have to go with it.
Yeah.
Matt didn't have to make her roll anything.
Yeah.
She could have just said, I want to do X, Y, and Z. And he could have either said, okay, you do that, or meet her in the middle, or just let her make a sleight of hand check or what have you. And the result of the check is either high, so she gets away scot-free. No one knows. Mm-hmm. Or it's not so high, and something goes wrong, there's a little complication. Maybe roll one more time. Or you do what they did, which is, okay, you start making rolls. And the dice are either with you or against you.
Yep.
And then you just have to follow it down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And that scene was the quintessential Game Master has no idea what's going to happen. And is just going to go with it. He didn't fudge any of the saving throws for any of the guards. Could have.
Yeah.
He very easily could have said, your spells work on everybody. You get away.
Yeah. He also could have very easily said, no, your spells don't work. You're in jail.
Yeah. Yeah. So, one thing that was interesting in that also. So, talking about shopping and character choices, we see not beginning to grow, and even Taliesin was like, "Welcome to tinkering."
Yeah.
When she's making the explosive arrow and everything, and I was just like, okay. And that's when I was like, I wonder if she's just gonna get proficiency in it.
I was wondering if she was going to go tinker all the way back when she was focused on making acid. I was like, she's going to be the Percy of the group in my brain. She's going to be the one building things.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I didn't necessarily think tinker's tools and gaining proficiency, but I saw her in that role from that point. You know, in episode 2 or 3, when she tried to make the acid and burn the hole in the floor, and Caleb had to use his
transmutation. Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I didn't put that together because usually, in most games that I've played in, if someone has proficiency with alchemist supplies, they're making stuff for them to use. It's very rarely distributed to anyone else in the group. So that's why I didn't make that connection.
For the most part, that's what Percy did too. I mean, he did some giving Vex arrows and stuff like that. But the guns, diplomacy, you know, all that stuff was made for him to be used by him.
That's true.
So,
yeah.
Speaking of not, her little shopping. So, you think she knows where that halfling is? And that's who she's sending all that stuff to?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought too. And I love the gloves.
Or
someone
his family.
Because she does want to go back home now.
And 100 gold goes a long way.
Yeah.
For normal folk. And I think that makes 150 gold. I think she sent back.
Yep.
Because I think she previously sent 50 gold.
Yeah.
And the content of her letters seems to indicate a child.
Yeah.
Which is why I say I don't think it's necessarily him, but it could be his family.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. Background stuff. Not an enlist Jester to write the spam email.
The town of Nigeria. Put it on the map somewhere, Matt.
Trying to get information on
Astrid.
Which
no last
Jester
name given.
said, yeah, he said that name.
Yeah. You think that was his girlfriend?
We were never given a name for that female wizard that performed the ritual with Molly and Cree.
You're right. I didn't.
What if that was Astrid?
That very well could be. That would fit.
Uh-huh.
That would fit well.
Uh-huh.
Which would be also part of why. I mean, I know why I think Molly's story isn't over, but that could be another reason why. Because Matt and Taliesin have both specifically said Molly is dead, but his story is not over.
Yeah. So I mean, we think that the Moonweaver is going to have something to do with the trammels that they get.
Right.
But I think Matt used these details in Taliesin's backstory, where he's like, it was a female wizard, I think he wove them in with Caleb so that when the time came, they each would have a reason to go, oh, shit.
Yeah.
And so this puts... And I loved Liam's reaction in that whole little exchange between Matt and Laura, Sam and Laura. Because at first, he's totally not paying attention. He's doing stuff in D&D Beyond. And I think he was making his shopping list. He was making sure how much gold he needed to copy all the spells. And I am sad that he and Matt have settled on this ink and paper thing, because that's not the only thing that a wizard needs when they're learning spells. They need the special inks to copy it into their spell book, but they don't need extra paper. But one of the things they do need are components.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like, to me, when I read that section,
unless his spell book is like a 3-ring binder.
yeah, maybe. But we haven't seen that, so. But my thought has always been, it's the components that the wizard's buying and experimenting with.
Okay.
Because in theory, you're trying to cast the spell as you're learning it, and so you're failing if you're using resources and stuff.
Gotcha.
But this is how they've settled on to do, despite the fact that Caleb does use a component pouch.
Yeah.
It doesn't irk me at all. Like, I'm fine with it. And it's great because he's showing where Wizards' money goes.
Yeah.
And why magical equipment is so expensive. Mm-hmm. Because the wizard had to dump all that money into his profession.
Yeah.
To make that item.
Yeah. And we do see him make the transmuter stone.
Yeah.
What do you think the bonus he chose is?
Well, he said night vision.
Night vision? Okay. I didn't catch that.
Yeah. And I'm not sure why he chose that.
Because he's the only one that can't see in the dark?
It hasn't been that big of a hindrance, though. And he's got dancing lights.
Yeah.
I don't know. Because one of the options is like temporary hit points or something, isn't it? I don't remember. I should have pulled the book out.
Yeah.
Before we
started.
But yeah, well, maybe we'll talk about that either next week or the week after when we do our show. But that's another thing I wanted to talk about in this episode is how Caleb and Matt have been running the progression of the wizard.
Yeah.
And sort of narratively tapping into this stuff. Mm-hmm. And Liam has put a lot of forethought into the spells that he's taking at each level.
Correct.
So he was able to foreshadow Leomid's tiny hut in episode 7, I think? 8?
Yeah. I'm working on that. And he, even in the creation of the tiny hut, is alluded to the mansion.
Yeah.
I haven't figured out how to make furniture yet.
Yeah. So, and the only other person we've seen that with is Bo.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I really like the going back for training and how they role played that.
So, do you think this is something that Marisha wanted to do? Do you think it's something Matt wanted to do? Or do you think it's somewhere in the middle?
I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think it's partly something. I think Marisha wanted to do some kind of training.
Okay.
I think Matt wanted to showcase the reasoning behind and the fluff element of the abilities of this subclass.
We are in agreement.
So,
I also think it's somewhere in the middle. And no one else has done very much of that.
No.
And I don't know if we'll get any of the other ones doing that.
Ford has started to. what with the studying the blade. He's consciously trying to figure things out. Part of why he hasn't done it as much is because he doesn't know how he got these powers. He doesn't know where they're coming from.
Okay, I can buy that, I guess.
But now he's actively seeking that out. I'm not saying he's going to.
The only argument I have against that is he has never tried to contact the patron.
Right.
He has always been passive in that contact.
Right. But I think we're going to start seeing him try to do that stuff.
Okay.
I mean, this week was the first time we saw him do anything active about working on it.
It's true.
So I think we're going to see him move that way as he tries to understand, especially now that we're going down basically into the Ford backstory with the subplot of Jester's backstory, probably just because of the location.
Yeah. Do we think... So you asked me, are we going to have a huge combat this week?
I said, how big a combat?
Yes.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, I don't think we're going to have any. But then I had to...
But then I mentioned the fact that even though we're coming off of 2 weeks without any combat...
Yeah, and I was like, well... I don't think Matt necessarily thinks that way, but I started rethinking the ending of the episode. And Matt fast-forwarded. Like, the last 2.5 minutes of the episode are him basically fast-forwarding the week to 8 to 10 days that it's going to take to get to that crossing point that he turned back from on his downtime narration. Because Matt specifically said it's dangerous in that earlier section. He just fast forwarded to it.
Yep.
So we didn't get to see Gustav or...
Which made me sad. When he first mentioned Trossenwall, I thought he's going to look for Gustav. And he didn't. And I was like, well, I don't know that it was important enough for Travis to think about to Travis.
Yeah, well, and I made the point that I don't think he's thinking about Molly at all. And his reaction to Creed later when he got back basically proves that out. That I don't think, like, even if he had made it to Trostenwald and Matt narrated him running into Gustav, we might have had just an earlier similar reaction.
Yeah. Of
him basically either lying or telling him, he's dead. Yeah. If the Moonweaver is a goddess that they need trammels from, now we've been going on the assumption that Gustav was a villain.
Yes,
and had more to do with the
Cavalry.
devil troll or
frog.
Yeah. But didn't Molly say he picked up his worship of the Moonweaver from Gustav and the circus?
I think the circus. I don't remember it being Gustav specifically.
Okay. I may have...
and it could have been. I could be wrong.
But if Gustav is that potential...
He could be that potential link to finding the Moonweaver when they could, yeah.
Because I think we're both in agreement that if that's going to come into play, it will be on the way back that happens.
Oh, yeah. I'm not expecting it for a while, because when they're nowhere near the level where they're going to be at that point.
So, thus far, Matt has done a pretty good job of essentially every location they've gone to has been between 1 and 3 levels that the characters gain.
Okay.
If he stays with that, Nicodranus and Port de Mali and the Menagerie Coast means that the characters will be 8th level when they are returning to Zadash.
Which is the level they were when the first campaign started streaming.
Yeah. When we had the Horn of Orcus found.
Mm-hmm.
The first bit.
Yep.
Into Vecna. Now, I think he has layered these things in much better in this campaign.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of the whole slavery shackles thing is Change of Bolivian.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the other thing I wanted to touch on.
Yes.
And it also comes from when they were shopping.
Okay.
And we had a Return of the Meta game pigeon over this. The sword hilt they found and left.
Yes.
In the
cove.
In the cove, turns up at Pumat Sol's place.
Yeah.
And Pumat sells it to them for 300 gold.
Yep. Sells it to Caduceus.
I said at the time, that's a vestige.
We both did.
I think we got the proof last night.
Yeah, a broken sword with a magic item
card.
Yeah,
he gave him the card, which means it does something.
Yeah. It's one of the unnamed vestiges because in the Tal'Dorei campaign setting, it lists a bunch of vestiges, the ones we saw in the first campaign, plus a few others. But it says there's more vestiges out there.
Yes. And that's the story point for any game master who wants to run a game in Tal'Dorei more than anything, I think. But Matt has shown that when he creates these vestiges, they are created with 1 to 3 players in mind. They're basically created around a class.
Yeah.
A broken sword hilt with no blade sounds an awful lot like an item that a Hexblade Warlock could make use of when he can summon his own blade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, he specifically said it's of a longsword.
Yeah.
And who can use longswords? Ford.
Yasha.
Not.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's interesting that he's introduced it this early, because the first vestiges in the first campaign weren't introduced until after Craghammer.
Right. However, this is in this campaign, Matt's doing a lot of there's different ways to do things.
Yeah.
There's ways to change things up, even using the same thing. Even using the old tried and true monsters, you can make it fresh.
Yeah.
I think this is one of those examples.
Yeah. So we were talking about what happens when Ford consumes these weapons.
Yes.
Do they end up in the Kraken's horde? Is he going to introduce a mechanic for Travis to be able to switch between the weapons?
Right.
If this is a vestige,
they all just compound?
Does this vestige tap into that? That this sword hilt has something to do with his consuming of weapons? If it is a warlock, a hexblade item.
My argument against that would be the Pact of the Blade, when it talks about making something your Pact Weapon, talks about intelligent and legendary items cannot be made your Pact Weapon. And vestiges are legendary weapon items.
Okay.
It specifically states those overly powerful ones cannot be your Pact Weapon.
But specific rules always overrule general rules. So if this item has a specific exemption to that.
That's true.
So, aha! Theory saved!
I mean, it could be a hilt that a pact weapon can spring from that hilt, which would change the hilt to where just the eye appears in the blade.
Yeah. Yeah,
or it could end up being just a sword that he carries, and he's got the sword or his pact weapon.
Yeah. Which we didn't get the retcon that we both thought might happen. Right. Which is, no, I didn't want to make it my pact weapon. I just wanted to.
No, it stayed his pact weapon.
So that was interesting. And Taliesin misspoke and almost had to pay gold for something he already had. The proficiency in the Herbalism Kit.
Yeah. That was... Yeah, he spoke in a way that Matt misunderstood. And
yeah. Well, no. He asked for the wrong thing.
Okay.
He asked for training. That's specifically what he asked.
Training doesn't mean... He just... Okay, you can be proficient in something and not know how to make a specific... Like, I can have a herbalism kit, and I can make salves and stuff, but I've never made a healing potion. I need to know how to do this. Just because I am proficient in alchemist tools doesn't mean I can make every alchemical item. I know the recipes. He could have been asking for training for something specifically he didn't know. And I think that's where he was coming from, and that's the way I took it when he asked.
Okay.
But yes, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I see why Matt, and that's why Matt misunderstood.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's like, not that this is a direct parallel, but Skyrim, okay? You can have your alchemy all the way up, but if you don't have the recipe for something, you still can't make that thing.
Yeah.
Unless you trial and error it.
Yeah.
So he's asking for the recipe for that thing that he didn't know how to make.
Okay. I mean, I can buy that, but, like, the reason you want to have Herbalism Kit is it says right there in the description of the item, proficiency in this kit allows you to make healing potions.
Yeah, but he says he has it from his background. He's the hermit background.
Yeah.
That doesn't... So, if he's so he's got it. He may not have taken hermit to be able to have that so that he can make healing potions. And, I mean, that's going to be the most common reason you're going to get it, but that's not the only reason to get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that goes back to the story versus mechanics argument, and...
Yeah. And
is doing what's optimal and what the mechanically...
Yeah, in the discussion we had over the weekend, over whether or not you play the game, but that's too big of a tangent to get on this late in the show.
I think that's a whole separate show in and of itself.
Yeah. We had Caleb basically gave us all of our theory crafting evidence in the episode.
Yeah.
Which we've already mostly touched on. So we haven't discussed the possibility that he takes Time Stop as a spell.
Right.
And Matt basically sort of mentioned that as the possible spell to get. And they're sort of dancing around the concept of wish.
Yeah.
And at some point, the dodecahedron is going to come into this.
Yeah.
And does Caleb make the same choice as Barry Allen?
Yeah.
Or rather, does he make the same series of choices? Because Barry Allen first went back and saved his parents.
Yep.
And then stopped himself because realized they had to die.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the future is ruined. Are we going to see an arc like that in Caleb, do you think?
I think there's potential for it. I'm not convinced that that's how it'll play out.
Okay.
And we did touch on this a while ago.
Yeah.
You know.
I just the last episode just made it feel like that was going to be coming back.
It did, especially with all the time questions and stuff. But I'm not sold on it.
Oh my.
Yes.
What if Caleb starts messing with time?
Okay.
And maybe as part of a one-shot or something, I don't know. Or maybe it's just in campaign canon. They pull a Dragonlance.
Fisting Daedalus?
Yeah.
See, that was where my thought went when he was talking about time, was Fisting Daedalus, but that's the, Dragonlance fan in me.
Yeah. But what if that's sort of the route they go, where Caleb is able to take them, or a select few of them, back in time to pre-Divergence?
Yeah.
Where Matt's able to narrate the
Part
Divergence.
Yeah. That could be fun.
So yeah, I was like, huh. Let's see, who haven't we talked about yet, really? Well, Jester we've touched on. There's something I want to talk about Jester. We haven't spoken specifically about it. We touched on her raid and how Laura was right in everything she did there. But one of the things that happened that was huge for our theory, well, your theory really, about the Traveler being Artagon / Garmelie happened when he appeared to her. Because he says, "What's that?" He says, "This is magic I've never seen before."
Mm-hmm.
And on my first viewing of it, it was just sort of the mind blown kind of, this is evidence. My rewatch, I actually paid attention to the other players.
Okay.
And Travis and Marisha both were having a similar reaction to me, but for different reasons. They were both like, wait, this guy's... I could see the thought process going on in their heads was, this guy's supposed to be a god. What do you mean this is magic he hasn't seen before?
Right.
That was sort of the reaction that they were kind of having. They kept going back, and they were whispering back and forth.
Right. I noticed them whispering. It didn't occur to me because I'm like, yeah, this... Like, in my brain, this is already a done deal. So I'm not even looking for more evidence for it. I'm just like, yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah. So, but yeah, on my rewatch, I noticed them, and I'm like, okay, this is gonna go somewhere. And then in the same scene, he drops, "Yeah, we're all gonna get together."
Yeah.
The day of the Zenith,
which
I think is the summer solstice.
Yeah.
So that gives us a timetable of when they are going to be past level 10.
Yeah.
In my view.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because it's not until really after level 10 that you start getting into the deity level stuff.
Yeah.
Where you're on the level to conversate with that deity. When a cleric gets divine intervention. I don't know. So that either means we have 10 episodes ish. 10 to 15 episodes.
Okay.
Between now and the summer solstice.
Okay.
Which means...
I'd probably say closer to 15.
Yeah. And that would give him 4 episodes of level.
Yeah.
And traditionally, like the 5 to 6 is almost the longest. It's the hardest lump to get over.
Yeah.
Experience points wise.
Mm-hmm.
Just because the enemies you're fighting don't give you the same kind of XP bump.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I'm looking at, because I'm like just shy of 5th level in our game, our Monday night game, and I'm like, 6 is going to be a bitch.
Yeah. And that's something that I'm struggling with that I don't know if I have an answer for. But they're already 6th level.
Yeah.
And we're sending them to an area of the world that we know a cult of Tiamat is heavily active in. We know there's extraplanar stuff happening. Or you thinking the one shot might be, or our guest GM might be?
Well, that might be, but no. My thought when you said that goes back to what I said about the vandalism of the Platinum Dragon. Do they try to infiltrate the cult?
And use
with
that as
rumors have been spread about, oh yeah, that was me.
I could see that if they are going to do that.
If they do that, if that happens,
that's their end.
That's their end.
For sure. Which doesn't help clear Jester's name.
No. Unless she does it under an assumed identity.
Yeah, and nobody saw her.
Yeah.
Because even when she walked away, she took the guise of an old beggar woman.
Yep.
So yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but yeah.
I hadn't either, just till you re-mentioned that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, hey.
Yeah, for sure. So we gotta go.
Yep.
So yeah, we're gonna see. I'm calling 3 combats.
Okay.
Thursday.
Okay.
Only one of which will be super dangerous. Yeah. And yeah, we'll see about, because they're going to announce what the one shot's going to be on Thursday. They almost sort of have to, or they might announce it tonight. They could be getting ready to do it right now.
Yeah.
Because Matt and Marisha are the guests tonight. So we started a couple minutes late. We're going a couple minutes late. We're even.
Bye, guys.
We'll see ya.